Then, in 1977, at the age of 33, he was elected mayor of Cincinnati. This is how Jerry saw his future then.
I grew up a bit. I mean, you know, everybody matures. That's a function of living. And I feel now that there's been acceptance, you know, fairly widespread acceptance of me as a person. Where do I go? I love what I'm doing. I mean, I love being in politics. And that's the only thing I'm sure of, that I want to stay in that. I mean, I don't chart out my life saying in 1980 I'll be here, in 1984. I mean, I learned that you don't do that. So all I can say is that I'm going to stay active in politics and now concentrate on hopefully being a very good mayor.